Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely thrilled today. We are sitting down with a titan of American retail. A man whose name is still on buildings all across the country. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
I am James Cash Penney, though most folks simply knew me as JC Penney. I spent my life trying to prove that you could build a successful business simply by treating people the way you'd want to be treated.
That's a philosophy we could use more of today. Let's start at the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on September 16th, 1875, on a small farm just outside of Hamilton, Missouri.
And what was your given name at birth?
It was James Cash Penney.
Cash is such a fitting middle name for a future businessman. Is there a story behind your birth name?
You know, people always think it was a sign of things to come, but it was actually a family name. I was named after my father, James Cash Penney Sr. He was a Baptist minister and a farmer. The name Cash came from his mother's side of the family.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Hamilton was a quiet, hardworking Midwestern town. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors. It taught me the value of community and the importance of a man's word. Life on the farm was disciplined. We didn't have much in the way of money, but we had plenty of chores.
What was your family life like?
It was rooted in faith and hard work. My father was very strict but very principled. He believed in self-reliance. My mother was a wonderful, steady presence. We weren't wealthy by any means. My father's ministry didn't pay a salary, so we lived off what the farm produced.
What kind of kid were you?
I think I was a bit of an old soul. I was very serious and quite industrious. I wasn't much for playing around when there was work to be done. I think I inherited my father's intensity.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
Honestly, my biggest fear was failing to live up to my father's expectations. He set a very high bar for integrity and work ethic. I also worried about our family's financial stability, which is probably why I was so eager to start earning my own way.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
For a long time, I thought I might follow in my father's footsteps and enter the ministry, or perhaps become a lawyer. But as I got older, I realized I had a real head for commerce. I loved the idea of building something tangible.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I enjoyed reading and public speaking. I wasn't much of an athlete, but I loved the quote-unquote literary society meetings where we would debate and give orations.
What was your first job?
When I was 8 years old, my father told me I had to buy my own clothes. So I started raising pigs. I bought a couple of shoats, fed them up, and sold them for a profit. That was my first real taste of business. My first official job after school was as a clerk at a local dry goods store in Hamilton called J.M. Hale & Brother.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I don't know if I felt quote-unquote different, but I certainly felt more driven. When I was clerking, I noticed that most people just did enough to get by. I wanted to know everything: how to fold the fabric perfectly, how to speak to customers so they felt valued, how the inventory moved. I saw business as a calling, not just a paycheck.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Moving to Longmont, Colorado, I had health issues. My doctor told me the Missouri humidity was bad for my lungs, so I headed west. I opened a small bakery there, which actually failed. But that failure led me to work for Guy Johnson and Thomas Callahan in their Golden Rule store. That was the seed for everything that followed.
What was your biggest break?
When Johnson and Callahan offered me a partnership in a new store they wanted to open in Kemmerer, Wyoming in 1902, they put up 2/3 of the capital, and I had to scrape together the rest. That store was the very first J.C. Penney.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Capital was always a struggle. To get that first store started, I had to use every penny of my savings and borrow even more. Also, that first store in Kemmerer was in a tiny mining town where most people bought on credit at the company store. I insisted on cash only. People said I was crazy and that I wouldn't last a month.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. I had too much of my father's stubbornness in me for that. When things got tough, I just worked harder. I believed so deeply in the golden rule principle that I felt it had to succeed.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
I was an early riser, usually up before the sun. I also made it a point to visit my stores and talk to the associates. I never liked the word employees. I called them partners. Keeping that personal connection to the front lines was essential. And prayer, of course. I never made a big decision without it.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I think I would have been a farmer. I always loved the land and livestock. Even at the height of my success, I spent a lot of time on my farms breeding Guernsey cattle.
What was your life like before fame?
It was very modest. When we started in Wyoming, my wife Berta and I lived in a tiny space above the store. We used packing crates for furniture. We were working 16 hours a day, but we were happy because we were building a future together.
How did relationships change after success?
It became harder to know who to trust, but it also allowed me to be more generous. I enjoyed being able to help my family and give back to the church and various charities, but I tried to keep my circle of friends grounded in people who shared my values, not just my tax bracket.
Did fame bring happiness?
Success brought satisfaction, but happiness came from my family and my faith. Fame itself was often more of a burden. I never wanted to be a celebrity. I just wanted to be a good merchant.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The loss of privacy and the constant pressure to be J.C. Penney the icon rather than just Jim the man. Also, when you are successful, people expect you to have all the answers, and believe me, I made plenty of mistakes.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
Some people thought I was just a cold, calculating businessman because I was so focused on efficiency and cash-only policies. In reality, I was deeply sentimental and cared very much about the well-being of the people who worked for me.
What was your darkest moment?
The Great Depression. I had diversified my investments and personal fortune into many areas, including Florida real estate and banking. When the crash hit, I lost almost everything. I had a nervous breakdown and even spent time in a sanitarium. I felt like I had failed everyone who looked up to me.
What past regrets did you carry that you spoke about?
I regretted not being more cautious with my personal finances during the 1920s. I let the excitement of the era cloud my judgment, which led to that devastating loss during the Depression. I also always wished I could have spent more time with my children when the business was first exploding.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People often think I founded the company and it was an instant success. They don't see the years of grinding work in small, dusty towns, or the fact that I had to rebuild my entire personal fortune from scratch after I was 50 years old.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong, and how did you handle it?
During that collapse in the early 30s, I was practically broke. But instead of giving up, I went back to work. I took a salary from the company again. I went on speaking tours, and I focused on my cattle farming. I leaned on my faith, and slowly, I regained my footing. You're never too old for a second act.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It changed my surroundings, but I hope it didn't change my heart. I still wore simple suits and lived by the same morals my father taught me in Missouri.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
Without a doubt, my father. His lessons on integrity, even when it's difficult, were the foundation of everything I did.
What was life like in your final years?
I remained very active. I was still going into the office in New York well into my 90s. I spent a lot of time traveling, speaking to young people about ethics and business, and enjoying my farm in New York. I felt very blessed.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was serving as the honorary chairman of the board. I was very interested in how the stores were evolving into the big shopping malls that were becoming popular in the 60s. I wanted to make sure that even in those big stores, we didn't lose the quote-unquote golden rule spirit.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on February 12th, 1971, in New York City. I was 95 years old.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I once bought a prize-winning bull for $30,000 during the Depression when I was supposedly broke. My associates thought I'd lost my mind, but I saw it as an investment in quality.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
There was a rumor that I didn't actually exist, and that J.C. Penney was just a made-up corporate name. I found that quite funny. I had to do a lot of public appearances to prove I was real flesh and bone.
What was your most unique habit?
I was known for being a bit of a cleanliness fanatic in my stores. I couldn't stand a dusty shelf or a crooked display. I'd often walk into a store and start straightening the merchandise myself before the manager even knew I was there.
What was your favorite food?
I always had a weakness for a good, simple beef stew. And apple pie reminded me of Missouri.
What was your favorite book?
Aside from the Bible, which was my daily guide, I was very fond of The Man Nobody Knows by Bruce Barton. It portrayed Jesus as a modern businessman and leader, which really resonated with me.
Did you have any known rivalries?
I wouldn't call them rivalries, but we certainly kept a close eye on Sears and Montgomery Ward. We were all competing for the same hard-working American families. It kept us all sharp.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
In the early days in Wyoming, I used to stay open later than any other store. One night a man came in just as I was locking up. He needed a suit for a funeral but only had a few dollars. I stayed open, helped him find something, and because he was short on cash, I gave him the Golden Rule discount. He became a customer for life and brought his whole extended family to us. That's how we built the brand, one person at a time.
Did you ever prank someone?
I wasn't much of a prankster, but I did enjoy testing my managers. I'd sometimes send a friend into a store to act like a very difficult, demanding customer just to see how the staff handled it. It wasn't exactly a prank, but it certainly kept them on their toes.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
Probably my farm, Emmeline, in New York. I spent a great deal of money building up the Guernsey herd there. Some folks thought it was an expensive hobby, but to me, it was about pursuing excellence in agriculture.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Don't chase the money, chase the service. If you provide something of real value and treat people with absolute honesty, the success will follow. And never, ever let a failure be the end of your story.
Mr. Penney, this has been an absolute honor. Before we sign off, do you have any closing remarks or stories you'd like to share with our listeners?
Just this. I hope that when people see my name today, they don't just think of a department store. I hope they think of the idea that you can be successful and a person of integrity at the same time. Treat the world well, and it generally treats you well in return. Thank you so much for having me, Calvin. It's been a delight.
And that wraps up another conversation from beyond the grave. From starting with pigs in Missouri to building a retail empire, James Cash Penney really showed us the power of a golden rule mindset. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.